Welcome to a very snowy Friday in Philadelphia. We are thrilled again to do another one in our very popular series, Resolve It in 30, where you bring the questions and we bring the answers. Today, I am really excited to have with us Alan Marr and Sean McDermott from SRA Consulting with a really interesting topic. And it's a bit of a play on words, but it really is true. A lot of people want to just be very safe in their lives and not take any risk. And what Alan and Sean from SRA Consulting are going to talk about is the risk and safety and how it can affect you financially.
All right. Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you to you, to Yael, and also to Javier for the opportunity to present to our fellow chamber members. As stated, my name is Alan, and I'm joined by my partner, Sean McDermott here, and our third partner, Rico, was not able to attend, but together we make up SRA Consulting Group. So it's a consulting firm which helps companies with strategic planning, human capital, and then also risk management and safety. Before we get started, I just wanted to start off by talking to you about the purpose, the scope, and also the goal of this presentation. And so the purpose of this presentation is twofold. One, it's to raise awareness of your overall risk and how it applies to safety. But also, number two is how safety can affect your business financially. The scope of this presentation is we'll be focusing on occupational safety, which is really employee safety. However, this risk matrix that I'm going to explain here in a little bit can also be utilized in all areas of your business, whether, again, occupational safety, cyber safety or security, property, auto, anything like that. And you can even utilize it personally back at home with your families. And the goal of this presentation is also twofold. One is to help you understand what is your level of risk tolerance. And then the second goal is to really think to yourselves or ask yourselves, is my safety program good or am I getting lucky? In other words, am I being proactive or am I being reactive with safety? So we'll get into more details here. So with this matrix here that you see on the left-hand side, this is really what explains to you what risk means. So what is the definition of risk? It's probability times severity. So if you take a look at the columns, that is your severity. And if you take a look at the rows, that's your probability of an occurrence happening. And let's just start with probability. So as you can see, it can go from improbable all the way up to frequent. And then if we move up top in the severity of the occurrence, it can go anywhere from negligible all the way to catastrophic. And when you think about that, and we'll show you an example here in the next slide, we'll go through an example of how really we evaluate risk. But you want to think to yourself whether it's employee safety, how probable is it for it to happen versus severe? How severe would it be? And once you join those together, then you'll know what is your overall risk, whether it's high, whether it's serious, perhaps it's medium or low. And that really helps you prioritize where you want to focus on. Maybe you're comfortable with certain risk, whereas others may find it a little bit difficult. That's why we want to make sure that you fully understand what is your level of risk tolerance, because it can vary from you to somebody else as well. So now let's talk a little bit about what is your experience modification rate factor. It can also be called your mod rate factor, things like that. So just to go over that, what is it? Okay, so let's talk about that here. So the experience modification factor is basically a method of determining if your loss experience, meaning your incidents that you may have for employees, if it's better than average or worse than average. Okay. Now, how do I know if I have a good mod rate or experience modification rate factor? So basically, employers using the same workers' compensation class codes are compared versus the loss data of their peers. Okay, so there's three different ways to look at it. You can be considered average, which is a 1. You can be considered better than average, which is below 1. Or you can be considered worse than average, which is above 1. So let's talk about a 1. So if you're a 1.0, it indicates that you're average. You have average loss experience, meaning your incidents that you're having for workers' compensation are average to everybody else. You're being benchmarked that way. And this will consequently result in an unmodified premium. Okay. But if you have a greater than 1, meaning you're higher than average in types of incidents that you have, you're going to have an increase in premium. So, for example, if you're paying $10,000 or $100,000 in workers' compensation insurance, and say you're a 1.1, that means you're going to be paying 10% more than the average company in that classification factor, right? So instead of being average and paying 10,000, if you're a 1.1, you'll be paying 11,000, or if you're paying 100,000, it would be 110,000. But if you're below a 1, then you'll get a reduced premium, right? So that means that if, again, going back to that example, if it's $10,000, if say you're a 0.9, then you would be paying $9,000 as opposed to $10,000, right? So basically the bottom line is that the higher your experience modification factor, the more you will pay in your workers' compensation premiums. So you may be thinking to yourself as well, like, how long does a bad loss influence my mod rate, right? Or EMR rate? Well, a poor loss will impact you and your organization for up to 4 years. And this is how it works, right? So if Yael or Karen or Javier gets injured tomorrow, it won't go into this calculation until the following year. And then it's going to stay with you for the next 3 years. So it's really a total of it's 4-year process, right? So but also just keep in mind that it really focuses on, this mod rate focuses on a smaller type of incidents, not catastrophic type incidents. Catastrophic type incidents, or even worse, fatalities, are excluded from this formula, right? So that's how a bad loss can influence your mod rate. Now, okay, so that's all good and dandy, Alan, but like, how can I control my mod rate? Okay, so there's many different ways that you can do these, but there's 2 main ones that we want to talk about right now. The very first one is having a comprehensive safety program. This is extremely important to have. And you may be thinking, okay, Alan and Sean, what is a comprehensive safety program? Well, when somebody talks about a safety program, it consists of 3 different things. Okay, you have your training, which is very, very important. You have your safety policies and procedures. Again, it's all about having that in place so people know exactly what they're being held accountable for. But also the third piece is accountability in general for everybody. And it's not just employees, it starts with leadership, right? Leadership down to employees, and employees up to leadership. So altogether, think about it with a 3-prong effect there. That's what makes up your safety program. Again, you have your safety policies and procedures, you have your training, and you have accountability by everybody in the company. So that's really one way to make sure that your mod rate stays where it needs to be, or even better than the average. And then the other is, if you do have these type of resources, is having a safety consultant, such as what we would do, right? So are they able to provide assistance to you, whether it's in a third-party consulting vendor, if it's your insurance carriers that do that for you, or perhaps maybe your insurance broker can do that as well if they have safety folks. So those are 2 ways that you could raise awareness of some of the safety issues that you may have, and then being proactive to lower the probability of an incident. Okay, so yeah, you can move on to the next slide, please. Great. So now let's talk about some examples here. So as you can see with this first example here, it's forklifts, right? So forklift risk. Now, so everybody knows forklifts are part of OSHA's top 10 most cited standards, right? So forklifts fall within OSHA's powered industrial truck standard. Okay, so forklifts are always in the top 10. And with this picture that we took here on the left-hand side, we have a client which prior to me conducting a visit to their site, I knew for a fact that they had some issues with forklifts. So we conducted a mock OSHA audit, and I specifically focused on that area because anybody can go to the OSHA webpage and find out if a specific company has had prior incidents. And that's exactly what we did. We did some due diligence, found out that they indeed were having violations from a forklift perspective. And so that was one area that I was going to focus on. And as you can see from the picture, we were doing a walkthrough of the facility, and I noticed that that forklift was unattended. And that's definitely a no-go under OSHA. So you cannot leave your forklift unattended. And if you do, you have 25 feet. If you can make an actual, if you can actually see your forklift and you're 25 feet away or less, then it's okay to leave it running. But once you break that visual contact with the forklift, then you have to make sure that it's turned off before you walk away. So in this particular instance, the forklift was left running. The operator was nowhere to be found. And then as the gentleman I was walking with asked, where's the gentleman who utilizes this forklift? And he stated, oh, he's in his office. And coincidentally, he happened to be the trainer. Okay, so just think about that. The trainer for other forklift drivers was the one that committed this violation. So that was one thing. And then looking at the actual forklift, you can see the bottom picture. That's a pre-trip inspection. Okay, so there's a picture of 2 pre-trip inspections. So again, the documentation is key. The pre-trip inspection basically allows you to find any type of issues or hazards within the forklift that potentially could be a root cause for an incident. So it goes everything from, you know, the hydraulic levels, the tires, the backup alarm, things like that. But if you take a look at those pictures closely, you'll see that the individuals filling out these pre-trip inspections were pencil whipping those documents. And this happens all of the time with all of our clients that we've used this with. And so as you can see the left picture, basically this individual just checked off every single line. Yep, no, good, good, good. And on the right one, you can also see the same thing. It's even worse example of pencil whipping because they just drew a line all the way down. But if you look closely, or you may not be able to tell from this picture, on the left inspection, the bottom line item says damage. Okay, so damage, and this individual, pardon that, guys. So we have kids in COVID area, and unfortunately, you can't get them to stop talking sometimes. But anyway, the very last line item states is damage. Is there any damage? And so this individual clearly was pencil whipping it because they checked off that the forklift had damage on it. So further indication that that's a violation. So if OSHA came through, that would be another violation as well. Okay. So, and then last but not least, this company also had an amputation from a forklift driver. So further indication that you would want to focus on forklifts because it's higher risk. What happened is this individual went by a bollard, which is a cylindrical yellow piece that prevents somebody such as a forklift driver from driving the forklift onto a structure. This individual was heading right for it, and for whatever reason, the individual tried to swerve and actually put his leg out, and the leg actually got pinned in between the forklift and the bollard, crushing it, and subsequently they had to do an amputation. So those are the tragic events that we're trying to prevent. So with that, we go into the middle of the slide that says, talks about a financial impact. So let's just talk about a typical type of incident that can happen in a forklift. So what I tend to see is individuals not wearing their seatbelts. The forklift makes contact with a wall or something else, or even a bollard, and the individual's head goes forward, makes contact with either one of the structural members of the forklift or even the steering wheel, and lacerates his or her head or even the top of the head, which I've seen many times happen. So the direct cost of that, which would be the medical costs, would be $10,000, which could be staples, anything, going to the hospital, maybe calling 911 and having the ambulance come. So that is what we would call a direct cost. But and that would be paid for by the workers' compensation insurance carrier. But what is not paid for are what we call indirect costs. The indirect costs could be bringing in a new employee, paying for that structural damage, the time it takes to do the incident investigation, the loss of production. All those things are not paid for by the insurance carriers. And so when you see there the indirect cost being 2.7 times the direct cost, that 2.7 comes from OSHA. So OSHA did an analysis, and based upon the analysis, they found out that typically the indirect cost of an incident could be 2.7 times the direct cost. Now, on the construction side of things, just so you know, the National Safety Council did an evaluation, and because the construction, the risk is higher, it could be as much as 4 times higher, the direct cost, or even up to 17 times higher. But for this instance, in this particular example, which is more of a manufacturing distribution setting, we'll stick to the 2.7 times. So really, what is your total cost? The total cost is adding the direct cost and indirect cost. So really, if you think about it, a $10,000 claim is really $37,000. So just think about that. You're thinking, oh, 10,000, insurance carrier will pay for that. No, it's really $37,000, of which $27,000 is not being paid for by the insurance carrier, right? So now let's think about it. What if you're in an industry or a vertical where your profit margin is razor thin? So for this example, let's just pretend that your profit margin is 1%. So now here's the big picture. Here's where the rubber meets the road, right? So what is the revenue required to pay for the direct and indirect cost of a single $10,000 forklift incident? If you do the math there, you really would need to generate 3.7 million to be able to pay for that single incident. So just think about that. Whether it's if you're in a restaurant setting, or where how many meals does that take? If you're obviously in a manufacturing setting, how many more parts do you have to take? If you're delivering sodas, how many more cases do you have to make just to offset for that one single incident? So
Now,
can you?
Alan, let me just ask a question here.
Sure.
And in the roughly 10 minutes that we have left, you certainly you are seeing a lot of examples of risk that is out there. Okay. And before we get to the next couple of slides, what I want to do is just ask, do you find when you're doing an assessment that your client even recognizes the risk that is out there and what it can actually do from a cost perspective? Because what you're showing here in terms of financial impact is really very dramatic. Okay, it really, really is. And I don't think many organizations, unless you're really very large, a large corporation, really get that, if somebody slips, okay, or you trip over, you're in a construction yard, you trip over something, you're your forklift driver, et cetera, what this can do. So do you find that as you're doing this, that people are, organizations are aware of the issues and opportunities that come with this?
Great question, Karen. So they may be aware, but they don't see the bigger picture. They don't see how it can really, really affect their bottom line. And then also, if they are aware, they don't know how to prioritize their efforts, right? So if they're not aware of what is risk, just like we discussed, is it very high? Is it very low? Where they may have many different issues and they don't know where to start. So that's a great question. They don't typically see the bigger picture. What is the overall cost? They just see it as what's the direct cost.
And that's one of the benefits of working with SRA, I would imagine, that not only can you come in and show them, examples of the financial impact, but help them to understand the priorities in which they really need to take a look at those different things to really, understand the risk that is in safety, okay, and what they need to do to make sure that they are not affected negatively from a financial perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's not just financially too, Karen, because now that individual's life has changed forever, and their families' lives will change forever. And that's our biggest thing is we want to make sure that those individuals go home in the same shape as they arrived. And so that's huge because that impacts the safety culture in general. And obviously it'll impact your financially and your bottom line.
Okay.
Great question.
Right. Thanks. You've got about 8 minutes left now, so keep going. This is great.
Appreciate it. So then, okay, so we talked about the example, we talked about the financial impact. So how can we be proactive? How can we get ahead of our risks? So there's many different things that we can help you with, but one of those things is going to be a job hazard analysis. And there's different JHAs that you can use, but there's this version. My partner Sean is going to talk about job hazard analysis, and he's going to take you through an example. So yeah, would you mind going into the next slide, please?
Okay, so everyone, Sean McDermott, Alan, you did a great job explaining a subject that's really not a sexy subject to talk about. It's really a blind spot in a lot of organizations. But one of the tools that my background anyway is construction and service. So this is something that we fill out per job and per individual, depending on what it is. And really what it does, it gives you a total full picture of what's going to happen on the job. It's forethought into thinking about what is actually going to happen, the risks that you potentially are going to see, and what you're going to do. So if you scroll down on this job hazard analysis, it'll, so this encompasses the whole construction world. But really, there's parts of this that are segregated to certain industries. But everyone in the construction world is going to be dealing with something here or there that's on this checklist. So if something happens, who can they call? Who is the contact? What is the activities that people are going to be doing on the job? It's the full analysis. And if it's just, okay, we're going to be shutting off power. Everyone thinks that's so simple, but it's not. So you got to go and work on a piece of equipment. You're shutting off a piece of equipment. You have to, some people may just walk away. The reality is what they're working on may be separated from their visual sight. So they're working on something. An individual is walking by and they see that this is not a normal situation. They don't see the person who's actually working on that piece of equipment, and they end up turning on that disconnect while someone's working. An amputee could happen, a loss to that equipment. There could be, going back to Alan, where there's an indirect problem. The job that was going to be X hours is now substantially more. The reality is, if you go through and use this tool, you now can get ahead of certain problems. You can put action plans together. And the people who are doing these, the culture of that company is based upon safety. It's really the leader. It's not the blind spot within the organization. And when you're looking at this, these are just one of the many tools. Another tool that you could use is just having some key people and call them a safety committee that can get together and discuss a near miss on a job. It doesn't necessarily have to be your job. It could be another contractor who's working alongside of you, or someone on the site has done something unsafe and you witnessed it. Do you just let that go? Do you just decide to keep walking to your truck or go wash your hands and go to lunch? No, it should be brought up. It should be brought up because you should be an advocate for your customer, for the client, for the people who are around you. If you see something like we would have taken pictures of that in the past and still in the future, where we would discuss that picture of not maybe what was on our job, but also what was on the customer's site. So we're working on just say piping, for example, but we see that a panel for electrical distribution is off. What would we do? Well, we would take a picture, but we would go to the director, the lead engineer on that job, and we would be like, look, this is unsafe and this is why. So these are things where, when we're talking about a culture, the culture embodies the company, but really it should go out. And Alan's risk matrix even talked about that, going from from the job site back to personnel. So if you're in a service industry, or if you're making products or working in manufacturing, you're around risks constantly, not only from what the job encompasses of the safety, but also the equipment that you need to wear per the job you're working on. Are you wearing a hard hat? Are you wearing safety glasses? You got steel toe boots on, you wearing cut-proof gloves. So it was pretty impactful what someone said to me before, when we're talking about safety, and they asked, a group of people, what do you like to do for fun? And some people said golf. I like to fish. I like to play with my grandkids. I like to play with my kids. I like to take walks, go to the gym. Well, imagine if because something you didn't do or someone else who you're working with stopped that from happening. I mean, that's the stuff that needs to be impactful. And when you're thinking about this, like, what if you couldn't golf anymore? What if you couldn't fish anymore? What if you couldn't actually pick your kids up anymore because of a lack of accountability? Imagine the quality of your life is now destroyed for the next 25 years. Who wants to go through that? So clearly we can't go back and have some sort of revisionist history of a problem that happens. Like these things that I'm talking about are preventable. There's accidents on the job that there's some things that you could go through the scenarios that we could have done this, we could have done this. That's Monday morning quarterbacking. But unfortunately, this is the reason why you try to hedge as much as you possibly can to get ahead of safety. So to eliminate that probability that you could be getting hurt on these jobs. So, another tool is just having this discussion openly with all your guys. If you have a software system, that this is the first thing someone has to fill out when they're doing something as a simple task as, replacing fuses, or if it's replacing a massive compressor that needs a crane lift. Like these things need to be looked at. And it really needs to be in your action plans every day when you're out there. And discussing the EMR, there's Alan talked about with the direct and indirect, but there's two ways to get out of it. Either you time out of that and your EMR rating resets, or you grow your way out of it. Now, if you have a profit margin of 1%, I don't think you're going to do that. You're going to grow yourself right out of business. So it's not always optimal to look at things of what happens and what ifs. It's really to get ahead of things so you can mitigate as much risk as you possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent example. And as Sean alluded to, that's just one tool that you can use. And there's many different tools that we can help you to be able to identify and either eliminate the probability of an incident happening or mitigate the probability of an incident happening. So again, just one possible solution for you, but really we hope that you can take away some of these things here is basically know your risks, right? Know your risks, take a look at that matrix and say, okay, do I feel comfortable with my control measures to make sure that either we eliminate or lower the probability of incidents? But also, what is your level of risk tolerance, right? Are you comfortable with that? Because you may be comfortable, but somebody else, your partner or somebody else on your board or another business owner or your co-business owner may not be comfortable with that risk tolerance. So really make sure you do that because it can be subjective. Sean talked about a little bit, financially and also culturally, how that it can impact you overall, right? Again, if somebody likes to golf and now they can't golf anymore because they crushed their arm, right? How's that going to impact your culture? And last but not least, think to yourself, do I need to take action? Do I have an action plan? Because if you don't, you're going to get punched in the face and then what, right? So again, you want to be proactive as opposed to reactive. And last but not least, if you do have any other questions for us, you can please reach out to our website at sragroupconsulting.com, or you can reach out to us via email individually as you see it down there. So with that, I'll really appreciate it for the opportunity, and I'll switch it back over to you.
Alan and Sean, thank you so very, very much. I can tell you that this subject is really quite something. And although initially people would think it's very dry, there's nothing dry about the safety and security of somebody in a business, moving forward. Let me just ask, and I know we're a little bit over the time here period, but let me give you 15 seconds, Alan, to, what should a business owner really be thinking about? Because most business owners don't wake up in the morning and go, okay, safety and security, safety and security. They think profitability, how am I going to pay the bills, etc. Give me one or two bullet points, and then I'll close.
Absolutely. Is my safety program good, or am I getting lucky? Okay, main thing.
I love it.
My safety program good, or am I getting lucky? And two, do I know risk? What are my risks that I'm facing, right? And what is my level of risk tolerance? That's as easy as that. what are my risks? Is it forklifts? Is it, is it autos? Is it whatever the case may be, slips, trips, and falls? What is it, right? And are you comfortable with it? Or do you need to have additional controls? So again, is my safety program good or am I getting lucky? And number two is what are my risks?
And I'll have
Listen,
one more
I
thing.
want to thank you.
Hey,
Sean, go ahead. Go ahead, Sean.
real quick, I would put a team together, of a leadership team of safety to bring this out to the people who are actually doing the services or the production or the manufacturing.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you.
definitely.
We want to thank Sean. Thank you for your time today. Alan, thank you for your time today. SRA Consulting Group, they are valued members of the chamber. Reach out to them, and their information is on our website, or you can always call us at the chamber, and we'll be happy to give you their phone numbers and their email addresses. We also want to thank our super duper sponsor, La Mega. They are a proud sponsor of Resolve It in 30, and you can always reach out to them at 215-426-1900. And they are happy to put together packages, advertising on the radio for as little as $350 a week. And it's a great place to, put your investment. So with that, I want to thank you all. Make sure that you, tune into our website for all the upcoming events that we have. We want to thank everybody for their time and consideration today. Please stay safe and thanks for your time. Thank you, gentlemen.